How to pass JVM options from bootRun, Spring Boot, Gradle. This follows the same teaching style as your earlier Spring Boot topic. Introduction. When running a Spring Boot application using Gradle, developers often use .Gradle bootRun. Sometimes you need to pass JVM options while starting the application. For example, setting memory limits, XMX, XMS, enabling debug mode, agentlib, JDWP, setting system properties, d-key equals value, configuring profiles, dspring.profiles.active equals dev, tuning performance or garbage collection. A very common question is, how do I pass JVM options when using bootRun? Understanding this is important because bootRun behaves differently from running a jar directly. This topic helps learners understand what JVM options are, why they are needed, how bootRun works, different ways to pass JVM options, best practices for development and production. This is a practical and important Spring Boot plus Gradle concept. What does passing JVM options mean? Passing JVM options means providing configuration parameters to the Java virtual machine when starting your application. In simple terms, JVM options equals instructions for how the JVM should run your application. Examples: XMS 512M, XMX 1024M, dspring.profiles.active, active equals dev. Example concept: start JVM means apply options, means run application with those settings. What is bootRun? bootRun is a Gradle task provided by Spring Boot. It allows you to run your Spring Boot application directly from source code without building a jar. Example: $bootRun. Example concept: Gradle task means compiles code, means starts Spring Boot app. This is mainly used for development, not production. Why JVM options are needed? You may need JVM options for memory tuning, debugging environment configuration, enabling, disabling features, setting system properties. Example concept: application needs config, means JVM options provided at runtime. Important difference: running a jar, Java, XMX, 1024M, -jar, app.jar. Running with bootRun, Gradle bootRun. You cannot pass JVM options the same way directly to bootRun. Example concept: Java-jar means JVM options passed directly. bootRun means Gradle controls JVM, means options must be passed differently. Method 1. Using org.gradle.jvmArgs, global JVM options. You can define JVM options in Gradle.properties. Example: org.gradle.jvmArgs equals XMX 1024M minus XMS 512M. Example concept: Gradle daemon JVM means uses these options. Important: this affects Gradle itself, not always the application JVM useful for Gradle performance tuning. Method 2. Configure bootRun in build Gradle. The most common and correct way is to configure JVM arguments in the bootRun task. Example: tasks named bootRun. jvmArgs equals -XMX 1024M, -XMS 512M. Example concept: Gradle bootRun task means passes JVM arguments, means application starts with those settings. This is the recommended approach. Method 3. Passing system properties, D. You can pass system properties using systemProperty. Example: tasks.named bootRun, system property, spring.profiles.active. Equivalent to -spring.profiles.active equals dev. Example concept: system property means available in Spring environment. Method 4. Passing JVM options via command line. You can pass JVM arguments using tab Gradle bootRun -JVmArgs -XMX 1024M -XMS 512M. Example concept: command line means Gradle means passes JVmArgs means application starts. This is useful for quick testing without changing code. Method 5. Using environment variables. You can pass JVM options via environment variables. Example: export Java ops -xmx 1024m -xms 512m Gradle bootRun. Example concept. Environment variable means JVM picks options, means app runs with config. Behavior may vary depending on setup. Method 6. Using application.properties. Indirect way. Some configurations like profiles can also be set in spring.profiles.active dev. But this is not a true JVM option. Example concept. Application config file means Spring reads it, means not JVM level config. Passing debug options. To enable remote debugging. Tasks.named bootRun, jvmArgs equals agentlib jdwp, transport dt socket, server y, suspend n, address 5005. Example concept. JVM starts in debug mode, means IDE can attach debugger. Passing multiple options together. Tasks.named bootRun, jvmArgs equals xms 512m -xmx 1024m -dspring profiles active. Example concept. Multiple JVM configs means all applied during startup. Kotlin DSL, build.gradle.kts. If using Kotlin DSL, tasks.namedorg.springframework.boot.gradle.tasks.run.bootrun, bootRun, jvmArgs equals list of xmx 1024m.xms 512m. Example concept. Same logic means different syntax for Kotlin DSL. Difference between JVmArgs and systemProperty. Feature: JVmArgs, systemProperty. Type: JVM level, application level. Example: xmx 1024m, spring.profiles.active. Usage: memory, debug, Spring config. Example concept. JVM config versus Spring config means both passed differently. Common use cases. 1. Set Spring profile, systemProperty, spring.profilesActive, dev. 2. Increase memory, jvmArgs equals -xmx2g. 3. Enable debug, jvmArgs equals -agentlib, jwp, and example concept. Different needs means different JVM options. Best practice. Best practice is use bootRun, jvmArgs equals blank for JVM options. Use systemProperty for Spring properties. Use command line for temporary testing. Avoid hard-coding environment-specific values. Example concept. Development config flexible means production config externalized. When not to use bootRun. bootRun is mainly for development. For production, use Java mash jar app.jar. Example concept. Development means bootRun, production means package jar. Common beginner mistakes. 1. Trying to pass JVM options like java-jar-gradle bootRun-xmx 1024m. This does not work. 2. Confusing systemProperty with JVmArgs, systemProperty -xmx 1024m, nexx. 3. Using org.gradle.jvmArgs for app config. This affects Gradle, not always the app. 4. Forgetting quotes in command line. JVmArgs equals xmx 1024m, xms 512m. Advantages of using bootRun with JVM options. Fast development, flexible configuration, easy debugging, no need to rebuild jar, quick testing of different settings. Challenges: confusion between Gradle JVM and app JVM, multiple ways to pass options. Differences: debugging configuration issues, concepts learned in this topic. By learning this topic, you understand: what JVM options are, how bootRun works, how to pass JVM arguments, difference between JVmArgs and systemProperty, command line versus build configuration, best practices for development. Simple definition. Passing JVM options from bootRun. providing JVM configuration parameters to a Spring Boot application when running it using Gradle's bootRun task. Final summary. To pass JVM options when using bootRun, the best approach is tasks.named bootRun jvmArgs equals xmx1024m xms512m. You can also pass system properties. System property spring.profiles.active dev, or use command line .gradle bootRun -jvmArgs -xmx1024m. The key idea is bootRun runs your app via Gradle JVM. Options must be passed through Gradle configuration. Use jvmArgs for JVM level settings. Use systemProperty for Spring config. Once you understand this, you can control your Spring Boot application behavior effectively during development.